How do we rebuild our life if we feel like we've failed until now? Not just failed once, but failed so many times that even our own promises stopped feeling real. Because rebuilding our life is not about waking up one day and suddenly becoming disciplined. It starts with one honest question. How do we become someone we can trust again? Most people think rebuilding means we need to change everything at the same time. And that belief makes sense when we feel like we have already fallen behind. We start craving a full reset, with better routines, a stronger mindset, and a life that feels nothing like the one we are trying to leave behind. But that is where rebuilding becomes too heavy, too fast. Because rebuilding does not begin with intensity, but with proof. So what are the 6 steps we need to rebuild our life after failing? Before we dive in, I struggled with this for a long time, so I know what it feels like to fall behind, break our own promises, and still feel like there has to be more for us in this life. And when we understand the structure behind that cycle, we can start breaking free from it. We need to understand what rebuilding actually means. This is not about showing the world that we became a different person. Rebuilding really means learning to trust ourselves again. Because when we keep saying we will change, but our actions stay the same, our mind stops believing us. And the only way to rebuild that trust is through proof. Small daily proof that we can still do what we said we would do. That is where rebuilding begins. And the first proof starts with something very simple. When life starts falling apart, our environment usually starts showing it too. The room gets messy, the desk gets full, clothes start piling up, and even basic things feel harder than they should. And after a while, that mess starts speaking for us. We look around and think, if I cannot even keep this space together, how am I supposed to fix my life? That is why the first step is not a massive life goal. We start with what is right in front of us. Cleaning our room, clearing our desk, doing the laundry, and taking care of ourselves. Not because a clean room magically fixes everything, but because it gives our mind the first signal that we are not completely powerless. It tells the subconscious mind that we can still control something, and once we control one small thing, it becomes easier to control the next one. A messy environment keeps pulling us back into the same old identity. A cleaner environment gives us the space to breathe, think, and become different. But cleaning the room is only the beginning, because even with a clean room, we can still spend the whole day scattered, distracted, and pulled away from what matters. So how do we make consistency real when the first burst of motivation is gone? This is where most of us get rebuilding wrong. We think we need intensity. The perfect morning routine, a hard workout plan, a full life reset, and 10 new habits at the same time. And for a few days, that can feel powerful. But then life gets heavy again. We miss one day, then another, and before we know it, we feel like we failed all over again. That is why rebuilding cannot depend on intensity. It has to depend on consistency. We need something repeatable, something small enough to do even when we do not feel ready. A 10-minute walk, one cleaned corner a focused hour, or a kept promise. That is how rebuilding starts to become real, not by doing everything one time, but by doing one right thing again and again. Because consistency gives us evidence. Every repeated action tells us, this is who we are becoming. If we only move when we feel motivated, our life will always be controlled by our mood. But when we keep small promises on normal days, we slowly become more stable. That is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity fades fast. Consistency builds identity. But staying consistent is difficult when our attention keeps getting stolen. Because the phone does not just take our time. It pulls our mind back into old habits, old emotions, and old patterns. So how do we rebuild when distraction is always one tap away? A lot of us do not realize how much our phone is shaping our life. It is not only taking our time, it is shaping our thoughts, our emotions, our focus, and even the way we see ourselves. When we wake up and touch the phone straight away, our mind starts the day in reaction mode. Notifications, videos, opinions, random people, random problems, and noise we did not even ask for. Then later, we wonder why we feel scattered. And sometimes, we do not need more motivation. We just need less noise. Because when every empty moment gets filled with scrolling, we never get space to think clearly. We are not processing our life anymore, but we are escaping from it. So reducing screen time is not only about being productive, it is about getting our mind back. Because what can we really control if we cannot even control our own attention? And we can start simple. By keeping the phone away from the bed, removing the worst apps from our phone, making social media harder to reach, and using one phone for normal life and one phone for distraction if needed. Or just set one clean rule: no scrolling before the first important task is done. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to stop giving the weakest version of ourselves unlimited access to distraction. Because when the phone becomes our default escape, normal tasks start feeling boring, even though without all that overstimulation, they would feel much easier to do. We need space to think, to feel, and to choose again. And once that space comes back, the next question becomes, which habits actually help us rebuild instead of just making us feel busy? This part matters because not every healthy habit works the same for everyone. For one person, the answer might be the gym. For someone else, it might be walking, therapy, better sleep, sunlight, prayer, reading, cleaning, or simply leaving the house more often. Rebuilding is not about copying someone else's perfect routine. It is about testing what actually helps us. Try something for a short period, journaling for a few days, walking every morning for a week, training 3 times, fixing sleep for 7 days, talking to someone, spending time outside, or reading instead of scrolling at night. Then ask one simple question: did this make our life better, clearer, calmer, or stronger? If yes, keep it. If not, adjust it or let it go. The goal is not to collect habits. The goal is to find tools that actually work for us. Because when we fail for a long time, we can start believing nothing will help. Trying healthier habits gives us options again. It shows us we are not stuck with the same pattern forever. But even good habits can become random if we do not know where we're going. So, what are we actually rebuilding toward? At some point, rebuilding cannot only be about escaping the life we do not want anymore. We need to know what we are actually building. Wanting to feel better can get us started, but it cannot guide our whole life forever. So, we look at the main areas of life: health, money, work, relationships, fun, peace, and purpose. Not because every area needs to be perfect, but because we need to know what matters most right now. Then, we make the goals simple. Not fantasy goals that make us feel behind again. Real goals. A floor goal and a ceiling goal. The floor goal is the minimum we can respect. The ceiling goal is the bigger thing we would love to reach. If health matters right now, the floor goal could be walking 3 times a week, while the ceiling goal could be training 5 times a week. If money matters, the floor goal could be tracking our spending, while the ceiling goal could be building a new income stream. That gives us direction without crushing ourselves. Because the point is not to chase some perfect future. The point is to make the next version of our life visible. But knowing what we want is still not enough. Because a goal only becomes real when we give it space in our day. So, how do we turn rebuilding into a normal day we can actually live? Rebuilding is not something we only think about. It has to become part of our day. Because if our day stays exactly the same, what can thinking about change really do by itself? Real change starts in ordinary days. In the morning when we choose not to rush, in the afternoon when we try to stay focused, and in the evening when old habits try to pull us back. So, if we want a better life, we need to design a better normal day. Not a perfect one, just a better one. Look at the things that matter most right now: health, work, money, relationships, fun, and peace. Then give them space. Maybe that means walking in the morning, doing focused work, training, staying away from the phone, calling someone important, or ending the night with something that feels good for us. That is how rebuilding becomes real. We stop waiting for life to feel different. We start making our days look different. And the schedule does not need to be extreme. Actually, it should not be. Because if it only works on our best day, it is not a real rebuilding schedule. A real schedule works on an average day. Because that is the life we are trying to improve. Not the perfect day, the average one. So let me wrap this up. If we failed until now, it does not mean we are finished. It just means we need to rebuild with proof. We clean up our environment, keep small promises, reduce the noise, test habits that actually help, figure out what we want, and build a schedule that makes that life possible. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to become someone we can trust again. Because once that trust comes back, rebuilding stops feeling impossible. It starts becoming one small promise at a time. Before we end, let me know in the comments, where do you feel like you keep falling back the most?